everybody, how are we doing? Welcome to Asian Dialect, a podcast show that explains common Asian phenomena. I'm your host, Ian Huang. I'm an independent journalist based in Taipei, Taiwan. According to the United Nations statistics, in April 2023, India's population officially surpassed China's, making it the world's most populous country. The other data also shows in 2022, China has 10.9 births per thousand people, while India has 17.1 births per thousand people. I think it would be normal to assume with such a huge population base, China's population should expand more, but this is not the case. There are many reasons contribute to the status quo, and the low marriage rate in China is one of the reasons we are going to discuss today. The quarterly statistical data released by Chinese Ministry of Civil Affairs shows that the number of marriages in China in 2022 will be 6.8 million pairs. According to the China Business Network, this figure has hit a record low since 1986. At the same time, this is also the ninth consecutive year of decline in the number of marriages since 2013. When it reached a peak of 13.4 million pairs, and the number of marriages in China fell below 10 million pairs in 2019, 9 million pairs in 2020, 8 million pairs in 2021, and by 2022, the number has left with 7 million pairs. Looking at the data, the number of marriages registered in 2022 fell by 803,000 pairs, or 10.5% from the previous year. Compared with the peak in 2013, the number of marriages in China has dropped by 49.3% in 9 years, a drop of nearly half. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss why are Chinese not getting married these days? And to begin with the topic, I found two interviewees, and here are their stories. Okay, can you share your thoughts and reasons for not wanting to get married? How do you feel about this in a society where marriage is seen as a traditional norm?
I don't have this kind of plan to get in marriage. I'm a little bit negative because I think it's really a big decision to decide. You need to make really big decisions together, like whether or not to raise a baby or which city you choose to live together in the future. I think just for me, I think you have to really trust your partner, your husband.
Well, I think in my case, the thought of not wanting to get married was due to childhood experience of my family. I feel like my parents did not have the most successful family. I feel like my mom, after marriage, has lost some of her own career goal, her own dreams, due to having to pay a lot of attention to the family. And it makes me scared that I may be the same after I get married, so I don't really want to get married.
I think there is a really big difference between my parents, my grandparents, and me. Yeah, because in our traditional culture, if you don't have any child, you can be the biggest singer in your family. It's kind of really big problems if you don't have babies. So they think marriage is important because you must have babies. So that's the reason why you really need to get married, especially for my grandparents, because they have 5 children and my parents only have me. So my parents hold the view that whether or not you want to have a baby, you must have some other partner to support your life.
Okay. Then what were the main factors that influenced your decision of now getting married? Did you encounter specific challenges or social pressures?
Well, like I said, it was mostly due to childhood family influence, but I wouldn't say I have decided on not getting married. Right now, for me, I would think that marriage is definitely not priority on my thing on my list of things I have to do in your life. Basically, the only social pressure that I'm experiencing right now, I would expect as I get older and I still don't want to get married, I think that pressure would arise more, but not right now. I could share a little bit. One of my cousins, she's in her 30s and she hasn't get married yet. And every single time she comes back to the home, all relatives is asking her like, why you're not getting married? And they will even like judge her and put a value on her just because of her age. Like they will say, I mean, you're in your 30s and the women don't hold any value once they're in their 30s. Or they will say things like, your family is losing face because you're not getting married, which I think is quite dumb. But I do think if I get older, probably that pressure will increase.
Definitely. My parents will always ask me if I have boyfriend or not. And for now, they don't really ask something about marriage because they also think it's too early to talk about that. But they always care about my current relationship. I really don't like that because it's kind of strange because when you talk about you are hanging out with your friends and they will ask, oh, is she, or is he, or is her, or how old is he, and is he also a student in UC Berkeley or not? Is he a PhD student? And what was his major? And it's a little bit strange for me. Yeah, I don't like that because even though I'm in a relationship, I think the most things is to have fun because the future is so uncertain. And you cannot decide my current boyfriend is the guy that really can getting married or spend the rest of my life because we just will go to different cities after we graduate. So I think the future is so uncertain that the most important goal for me is to have fun. But my parents just think I'm too easy about these things.
I see. Then do you think your parents' generation is different from yours?
So for our young generation, we definitely be more open with more lifestyles you choose. Like you don't want to get married and we support that, your decision. I think that's your own life and you have 100% right to decide what kind of life you want. But for most of our parents and also like other relatives, like my aunts, my uncles, they think that you are not the only one that has the responsibility to take care of yourself. You are part of the whole family. Yeah. So you're not a single unit. I think that's the really big difference between our generation and our parents. I think the low marriage rate, I think the real problem, like the money for raising babies is really high in nowadays. Also, I think in current situation, a lot of young people like me, we think a marriage is not a necessary thing you need to do because first, a lot of female, they have their own work and they got their own salaries to take care of themselves. And secondly, I think it's more like open to sex because our parents think that sex is a topic you cannot talk about that. And only you get married, then you can have sex. But for now, all of the young ladies and young women and young men, they think we don't need really to get married. We can just keep boyfriend and girlfriend, this kind of relationship for a long time. There is not much difference before and after you get married because you live together and you just share your money to support both of you. I think there is not necessary for a lot of people to getting married. Yeah. They can just keep this kind of relationship for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the past, people get married to have a more stable life with a partner that we share a same shelter, like a home. And it's also because as you mentioned, that the purpose or the function that was included in the marriage, like sex and emotional supports, these kind of things can be seen outside of marriage right now.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Then have you encountered any comments on your decision of not getting married, and how did the people react when they learned about it?
Most of these comments I heard were from my relatives, like my aunt. She didn't mean to offend me, but she just asked me, what if everybody don't want to get married? They don't want to have baby? What about the future of the whole country? That she was really worried about that. But
Wow, that must feel a lot of pressure on your shoulder because she was basically putting the whole China on your shoulder, saying like, "You are the future of our country, and what are we going to do?" It's really hard for me to imagine, having relatives to urge you to get married.
yeah, she started from a really different view. So at that time, I was trying to say that you cannot persuade somebody else that they must have a baby. And she just cannot believe what I said.
I have not. I could share a bit with how my cousin coped with it, basically because in my hometown, people are saying things like, there must be something wrong with you if you don't get married in your 30s. So she just doesn't come back to our hometown. She lives out in another city, works there, live there, and doesn't come back home because she doesn't want to face that judgment.
For sure, nobody should face such a judgment. Then how do you envision your future life without marriage? Since we know it's already not on your plan, are there other forms of relationship or lifestyles that appeal to you more?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I haven't thought about it a lot. Yeah, I made a joke with my parents that maybe in the future I could have a stable relationship with my friends. I don't know if that works. Or from my current plan, I don't want to have a marriage in the 5 or 10 years, at least 5 years. So maybe I think when I have the ability to raise my partner, to raise my baby, then maybe I will change my mind. And I think marriage is something I could think about in the future. Maybe after I'm 35 or 37, and other kind of lives, maybe I could live with my friends when we are both old and we cannot live by ourselves. We can take care of each other. And I heard that there is a law in China that recently changed, and that you can choose one of your friends to be your first emergency contact. You don't have to contact your parents or your relatives. You can find someone who is not have any relationship in law with you, and that one could be your first emergency contact.
Nice.
But my parents just said that's not reliable. They still think marriage is the only thing that can guarantee your life when you are old.
Not particular. I am the type of person that live as I go, but I wouldn't mind going into a senior apartment when I grow older. And they also just may be like, I don't get married because I don't want to be restrained to a marriage, but I may still have other romantic relationships, just not in form of marriage.
I see. Now I'm curious, how do you feel about the low marriage rate in China as a young Chinese woman?
First of all, I will not generalize this to entire China. I think the cultural and generational differences applies very differently in different parts of China. I do feel like, though, that the cultural norm of women should care more for the household while men should be making more money outside the house have benefited with that. One of the sociology theories states that, I forgot exactly what it is, but generally, household labors are viewed as non-existent labors. So men are doing labors outside of the house and their work is being publicly seen. So people will naturally pay more respect to them because they're seeing their work. And women, if they're in their household, their work is more private, so their labor is not seen, so people pay less respect to them. And I mean, as we're all humans, we all want respect from others. So I think that idea of women should also be independent, women's work should also be seen and respected, have really benefit, maybe not really, but like may have contributed to the low marriage rate in China. And also I would even think that like the feminist reform, it kind of arises a little differently in China than in the Western world. They were encouraging women to go out into the workforce. So women did. And because women were making money, they were getting respect from the society and also from their husbands. And slowly women realized that their societal value naturally comes from their work rather than from their family. So they feel like there's no need to get married. So they don't. Another thing that I've been seeing on social media is not particularly about marriage, but it's about giving birth have affected women of not wanting to get married. There is that idea that if you get married, then you should have a child or more than one child. And a lot of women, they don't want to go through pregnant and giving birth because that is very burdensome on the baby. Not on the baby, on the mom. So to avoid having to carry a child, they just completely avoid having a marriage.
Lastly, I asked them what advice will they give to those who may also be considering this non-traditional path, which is not getting married.
I would say we have the same opinion and we must face a lot of challenges from our parents, from our society. And I think the most important thing is that whether or not marriage, the most important thing is that you are the only person that can be responsible for your own life. And I think if you just made the big decision that you don't want the marriage, and you can try to live a better life, that maybe you can persuade your parents that I can take care of myself in a really good way. I don't really need a partner-in-law, or I don't need a husband or wife. It's really a long road. Try to discuss it with your parents. And also, you may face the stress from the society. I think that's much more easier because after all, they are not the person who really care about you. I say most of them are the strangers or somebody that is not important in your life. And I think you can just listen it and then just do not think too much about it. And in the future, more and more people will choose the same road as you. And our society will be more open to our decisions. And everyone can choose the lifestyle they want. And maybe you're the person who starts a little bit earlier than everybody else.
I would say first of all, stay true to yourself. And second of all, if you're facing societal pressure or like family pressures, you gotta be independent yourself first, such as if you're not financially dependent on your family. So once you're independent, then that's when you can really decide how your life is gonna be.
From the two cases we just heard, I think we took a glimpse at the reasons why Chinese people are not getting married these days. The cost of raising a kid is higher, the emotional support in a traditional household is also more accessible in different forms of relationships, and more women are financially independent, which means they don't need men and they can still be fine. But we also need to know the importance of the marriage rate or even to birth rate is very significant on a bigger scale. Behind all the number and data is the future of the country, just like what we heard in the story. However, I think establishing the future of a nation doesn't seem to be a good enough reason or good enough factor for young people to think about getting married or having a kid in China. The phenomenon of low marriage rates is not uncommon in Asia as a matter of fact. Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and so on. These countries are well developed and the younger generation just doesn't want to get married for whatever reasons. I think to this point you might be thinking, okay, Ian, I got it. But why did you pick on China and try to make it a big deal? And here are the reasons China is different from them. First, China is not as well off as these countries. The GDP per capita of Japan, Korea, and Taiwan is at least $32,000, while China only has $12,000, let alone the social security level in China. Now, let me recall the data in the first half of the show. The pairs of marriage dropped by 49.3% in 2022 compared with the peak in 2013. That's a drop of nearly half, a huge drop within such a short period of time. Not even a decade. Why is that? Aside from some people who simply don't want to get married, I think there are some other reasons actually. So, as we heard from the interview in China, getting married is more than just finding the one you love and committing a promise of staying with each other through thick and thin, but a thing that involves two families. So the bar to cross to get married is especially high. For instance, many families would ask the male to prepare a house as a bride price. And young people who might just get out of school and struggle to find a seat in the city for themselves, this is a mission impossible. So for some people, it's not that they don't want to get married, but they can't. Plus, getting married and having a kid might put some extra burden and uncertainty in their life and in their future. So as a way to de-risk the future, some decided not to get married. Of course, what constructs the social phenomenon is more complex than what we just heard today, including the evolution of society, housing prices, and policies. But I think we only have time for this much today. So if you like our show, please leave a 5-star review. That will help us grow tremendously. Or if you have any topic you would like to know about, you can also write us an email at asiandialect@gmail.com. asiandialect@gmail.com. Follow Asian Dialect wherever you get your podcasts. Asian Dialect is produced and edited by Ian Huang. Talk to you soon.